So I'm Mona Huys. I'm working for Mercer as an impact investment specialist. As part of our work on impact investing, we are looking at natural capital. And as part of natural capital, one of the areas we have seen as a great opportunity to have a positive impact on halting and reversing biodiversity is regenerative agriculture. Thanks a lot. So why is agriculture something very interesting in the topic of biodiversity? Because you may think, well, agriculture is actually kind of the oil and gas of biodiversity, right? It's like the oil and gas sector for climate. It's one of the biggest impactful sector on biodiversity, and there are so many kind of externalities surrounding agriculture. There are some cited there. It's fossil fuel based. There are large input costs. This is driving financial instability for farmers as well. So it's a system that is kind of running out of steam. But on the other hand, agriculture can be also a force for good if you're rethinking it, and it can be a responses to polycrises that we're facing. Those polycrises can be around climate, for example, because regenerative agriculture can be really a carbon sequestrator, so absorbing carbon thanks to more healthy soils, but it can be also a way to be more climate resilient. It reduces the use of water. It has also a positive impact on people and notably health. So there are so many things around regenerative agriculture and so many benefits out of it. So it's not too late to turn things around regenerative agriculture. So what if a sustainable model, profitable model was existing in agriculture? And to talk about this topic, there are three panelists with me, which will be discussing. Thank you, sorry, I think it's now a bit on the PowerPoint. But we have three panelists to discuss this topic about regenerative agriculture. So maybe I would ask you for a round of introduction and with the questions around how your organization is tackling the topic of regenerative agriculture. Maybe starting with you, Helmut.
Is this working? Yes. With pleasure. Thank you, Mona. And ladies and gentlemen, a very nice day, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Helmut Gaugitsch. I'm working at the Environment Agency Austria, and the Environment Agency Austria is the expert institution of the Austrian government in, I would say, all areas of environmental protection and sustainability. What are we doing? We are providing expert advice, scientific information, data, interpretation, scenarios, models on various ways which impact environment sustainability. All these topics are in our area of work and in our area of interest. That's focusing on Austria. We are the Environment Agency Austria, but we are also working in an EU-wide and also in a global context. I think this is very important. And Mona, as you rightly said, agriculture is at the core of a not only possible, but also necessary transformative change for nature, through nature, and you may name different kind of things here as well. That's why I'm happy to be head of department Biodiversity and International Affairs at the Environment Agency Austria, and together with my expert teams, I try to provide this expert advice to the Austrian government and others which is necessary. Now, what does that mean with respect to regenerative agriculture? Me personally and my colleagues have been intensively working with the Ministry of Agriculture of Austria on developing a Vision 2028 Plus with respect to how shall agriculture and rural development look like in the future. How can we ensure this necessary transformative change? And this vision includes various ways of transforming agriculture, regenerative agriculture, and other approaches, similar but also different, are explored for that purpose. And at the center of this is, and that's also at the center of my work, is to evaluate, to monitor, and to assess these different developments. I think it's very important to keep track. We are doing, hopefully to the good, but we have to monitor if we really achieve our goals. That's my introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Marianne?
Hello, I'm Marianne Neumüller. I'm Operations and Sustainability Director at Nespresso here in Austria. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Mona, for hosting me here today and having me on the panel. Regenerative agriculture plays an important role, a pivotal role, I would even say, in Nespresso. Back in 2003, we started with regenerative practices in coffee farming. We implemented the so-called AAA Sustainable Quality Program, and part of this was regenerative agriculture. So helping the farmers, also with people on the ground, agronomists, supporting then the farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture. It's about biodiversity. We have to keep the biodiversity. We have to restore nature. This is all around what we are looking for. And we try to have a value chain that is regenerative, and I can spoil something. So in 2024, 83% of our coffee that we were purchasing was regenerative agriculture, bronze level. There is a scorecard where we say, together with Rainforest Alliance, we've set this up. There's bronze, silver, and gold level, depending how far you are in your journey to regenerative transition. And 83% are already bronze level, which is very good, but there's still some way to go to gold for 100%.
Thank you. I want to ask you already some questions, but let's go to Andrew first. Around presenting yourself and also your role regarding regenerative economies and agriculture.
Thank you, Mona. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the nature stage. My name's Andrew McCue. For the past 6 years, I was working at a firm called Metabolic, based in Amsterdam, a sustainability research, consulting, and venture building company focused on combining science-based approaches to sustainability with systems thinking perspectives. In that role, Metabolic had put out a seminal report in 2016 with WWF on analyzing the global food system. It's, I think, the biggest employer in the world. It's one of the biggest sectors economically. It is a huge cost center socially if you start to look at the knock-on costs from environmental degradation and poor health. And therefore, it's a major leverage point for building a world that works within planetary boundaries. In the past 5 years, our team was very closely involved in writing guidance for something called Science-Based Targets for Nature. You might have heard of the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which is Science-Based Targets for Carbon. This was an effort to put together a similar perspective of how good is good enough on water retention and quality, on biodiversity preservation, on land use change, on soil pollution, etc., to keep us within planetary boundaries, if you're familiar with that framework. Planetary boundaries are the boundaries of the Earth systems that support life on Earth. It's a very difficult question when you start to apply it to a company's supply chain. Finding out, first of all, where the production is, second of all, what they have control over, and how they can bring themselves within planetary boundaries. So a lot of my work in the past 5 years was helping companies, unfortunately not necessarily Nespresso, but helping companies set these strategies. And once you're there, this is a long wind up to Regen Ag, Regen Ag ends up being the intervention that almost always makes sense. To bring production within planetary boundaries, to reduce risk of disruption from climate change and extreme weather events, to create some price stability. But it always takes a longer term perspective to sort of land that.
Thanks a lot. Maybe to start with you, Helmut, on the role of the government to go from conventional agriculture to regenerative agriculture. What's the scope of the government, what it can do, and also how the Environment Agency in Austria can help doing this transition?
Yes, thank you, Mona. It's a very pertinent question. Let me emphasize the Environment Agency Austria is an expert institution. We are not a ministry. So the Ministry of Agriculture, together with other ministries in Austria and probably very similar in other countries, is in the driving seat with respect to how agriculture is shaped from the government level. And of course, the government is a very important stakeholder, together with society as a whole, NGOs, science, business, and you name it. So the Austrian agricultural system, in the context also of regenerative agriculture and other approaches, is of course very intensively shaped by the common agricultural policy of the European Union and the implementation in Austria, as in all other member states, with the so-called CAP strategic plans. So in these plans, the government has outlined the aims they want to achieve, the targets they want to get with respect to biodiversity, which is so important, carbon sequestration, air quality, etc., etc. And the current system is functioning still quite on a subsidy level. And what we see, and what is also embedded in this vision of the Austrian Ministry of Agriculture 2028 plus, which I mentioned before, is to gradually transform it to a system where more the results and the ecosystem services provided by the farmers, and of course farmers have the key role here, are rewarded. So in addition to the market price they get, they are also rewarded for ecosystem services, be it carbon sequestration, be it offering biodiversity goals, etc. And my agency, we are trying to assist in this approach. We are conceptually and also methodologically wise working on how you can value and embed ecosystem services in an agricultural support system, and what is needed for that purpose, and how you can monitor effects and results. That's it.
Thank you. Are you already using those kind of payment for ecosystem services? Are you using a framework which is practical at the moment?
Again, it's the Minister of Agriculture, of course, implementing these systems. We have a very successful agri-environment scheme called ÖPUL. It's the österreichische Programm für umweltgerechte Landwirtschaft. Many farmers have adopted this, and the system at this stage is still quite focused on paying for income foregone or paying for additional measures which farmers have to put in place in order to achieve results. And it's not yet so much on the payment for ecosystem services. The government, my agency, is looking with interest on different success stories on payment for ecosystem services, results-based payments, there are different terms used. But it is quite a kind of transition, and of course in a system which is quite successful, where the Austrian farmers have learned and also appreciated to live with, still room for improvement is here. It takes some time before changes can occur gradually, and of course it always has to be shown that these changes also provide a benefit compared to the current system.
Thanks a lot. So Marianne, you've said that Nespresso has already 83% for the coffee as regenerative agriculture bronze. What is driving such a company, Nespresso, to go into the direction of regenerative agriculture? Is it for the image of Nespresso? Is it for the risk management? What are the benefits you see for such a large companies to go start to do regenerative agriculture?
It's a very good question. So there are three answers to give. So the first thing is, let me give you, put it into perspective. We know where the coffee is coming from. We know the farmers. We know the cooperatives where we purchase our coffee. So we know what are their constraints, what are the obstacles that they have, or what is the impact of climate change on their field, on their yields, etc. So, and I think with this knowledge, you have a responsibility also for the smallholder farmers. Many of these farmers, or most of these farmers, are smallholder farmers, and I had the chance to visit them in Colombia 2.5 years ago. They have 3 to 5 hectares on average, which is very small, and they have to feed a family out of these yields from these fields. And so there is no solution for one fits all. You have to adapt it to the regions, to the countries of origin. But I think if you know the farmers, you also feel the responsibility for them and for the coffee farming communities. I think this is the first thing. You have a responsibility. On the other hand, it's risk management for sure, because if you're a coffee company, you earn your money, you run your business with coffee. what is a coffee company without coffee? And if I look into the future, there are prognoses that say 50% of the Arabica fields where currently Arabica is grown will not be available because of climate change in 2050. So what will we sell then? What is the business then also for us? Looking at it also from an economic perspective. And the third thing is it's about restoring nature, and it's really saving the planet and giving us together a future. These are the three answers that I can give to this question.
Thanks a lot. And in terms of discussing this internally within Nespresso with the shareholders, was it hard to have the discussions into really trying to transition to this model? Do you have a lot of explanations to do, training to do? Like how do you sell this transition to regenerative agriculture? Is it kind of enough, those three arguments, even though they are very valid, or do you have to work way more with the management to convince them to go into that direction?
Actually, it's really embedded in our DNA. So we started back in 2003. So when many of the other food companies didn't think about regenerative agriculture, it was a small thing for some very interested people and very convinced people. We started with this as a big corporation. I think this shows that it's really, it's in our strategy, and it's not something, it's not an initiative, a sustainability initiative from a small group of people, the sustainability community in the organization that is pushing it. It's coming top down also. So because it's really a strategic decision to go in this direction. And if you see also the funds that we have invested in supporting the farmers on site with technology or technical assistance on site. That's a lot of money that we put there, and this is a strategic decision because we believe in it, and there is no other way for us to go, because we are known for good quality coffee, and if you buy an espresso, you pay more for the coffee for sure, but then you also want to have a good coffee and a sustainable coffee. This is what you expect as a customer, and this is what we want to deliver. It's a strategic decision.
Thank you. Andrew, as an advisor in regenerative economies, regenerative agriculture, what would you say are the main benefits or the main arguments for large organizations, investors, companies, to go into the direction of regenerative agriculture? Do you align with what Marianne just said?
I do generally align with what Marianne just said. But the big important thing for what we found working with different organizations is the door has to be cracked open by the culture at the top of the company. There has to be the permission to be exploring these in the first case. The second biggest thing, we were knocking on people's doors 5 years ago saying, you're not going to have production in 20 years if you don't do this. And it's not a very motivating narrative, we found. Although most recently, sitting around at COP16, the Biodiversity COP in Colombia, it's starting to show up more and more. 6 years ago, the disruptions to agricultural supply chains weren't painful enough to really motivate companies to be investing a lot in it. We were trying to break down investment in regen ag in a company into different risks that you can and benefits you would get from it. Often, the sort of reputational risk or the gain, the green halo, was actually pretty much non-existent. There's actually more risk from being called out for not doing it perfectly, and therefore companies were much more interested in green hushing than they were in shouting from the rooftops what they were doing. What ended up really changing the conversation for us was the regulations from the EU forcing more companies to look into what's called double materiality, not just their impact on nature, but the impact of the degradation of nature on them. And it's that second one, that the outside-in materiality that can travel from the sustainability team to the procurement, to the CFO's team across the board. I always like to distinguish, though, once we get into the implementing regen ag, between something you might call shallow regeneration and something you might call deep regeneration. There's a group called A Growing Culture who sort of published their version of these definitions. First of all, it should be clear that no one has an agreed upon definition of regen ag. So when we're measuring it, when we're certifying it, it's going to look different for just about every crop, just about every company, just about every geography. It leaves it wide open to a lot of different mismanagement things. But the difference between shallow regeneration and deep regeneration is this. Shallow regeneration is a no-brainer. You have to do it, otherwise you won't have soil, you won't have water, you won't have coffee in 20 years. That is the agronomic practices that are going to build soil structure, build soil organic carbon, improve water infiltration, improve functional biodiversity, which is a pain in the ass to measure, pardon my French, but really complicated to measure and difficult to quantify. Deep regeneration starts to move into the social and economic elements, the fair trade prices for these smallholder farmers, ensuring that they can support their families on it. And what we struggled with often was in the sort of education mindset change space around viewing crops less as a commodity and more as a valuable product that is unique to its area. And this is something that I have to respect the French for. The idea of terroir is increasingly being proven by science when we look at the nutritional density of crops in regenerative fields versus conventional ones in different areas of the world. You have different flavor profiles, different nutrition profiles. And here is where some of the most forward-thinking businesses are looking, is sort of, can you get a price for nutritional quality on regenerative agriculture? And I think that that might be an interesting, productive way forward.
Thank you. I think, as you say, there is no defined definition of regenerative agriculture. Helmut, do you think it's a barrier to the adoption of regenerative agriculture, kind of having endlessly this debate about what it means exactly?
Yeah, thank you, Mona. And Andrew mentioned it, there is no commonly accepted definition available. And in my point of view, this has advantages, but also challenges. But the point I would like to make is that climate change is there, biodiversity loss is there, and the farmers, they feel it, they recognize it, they know that continuing in the way as we have done, and this is in Europe, but also globally, the same situation is not an option. So changes need to be done, and at the end, I'm not saying that it's not important how we call the different approaches. I think it's fine to go along with an approach called regenerative agriculture with at least a common understanding of what is meant. And the FAO has given quite a very good, well, definition or explanation. And what I regard as very important is that here soil is put at the heart of the issues, and soil is the basis for everything in agriculture. Be it carbon storage, be it soil biodiversity, be it capturing water, and you may name different things. So my point is, let's work on improvements in agriculture, and farmers themselves want to do that because, as I said, they feel the pressure, the driving force. They know and they see that something has to change. And let's accompany these different approaches by monitoring and assessment. Yes, it is difficult, in some areas more difficult than the other, to have a clearer understanding if we are going in the right direction. And then at the end, and I know that it's important to name then at the end if it's organic farming or agroecology or regenerative farming, but all of these approaches should have a common goal, and that is improving agriculture in the liaison with biodiversity and climate change mitigation and circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe, Andrew, coming back to you, how do you measure success for regenerative agriculture? Marianne, you were mentioning the Rainforest Alliance. I'm not sure if it's really helpful to measure the success of regenerative agriculture. You mentioned as well that you're working on those methodologies, framework. In your expertise, working on that for many years, do you have really success metrics, a successful framework for regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, there's dozens. You just got to pick which one you're going to agree to work with on a given project. All the stakeholders involved in it have to agree that that's the valuable project. So we're working with a big food company on their tomato production in Iberia, working with a group called Climate Farmers, it's sort of a network of regenerative agronomists and farmers around Europe. For instance, they place a lot of stock on the global farm metric, which involves the socio and economic livelihoods of the farmers alongside the ecological performance of their farm. there's a lot of like sub-metrics involved in that. It gets very complicated, very difficult to do. An elegant way to do it, we were just discussing, I was congratulating Nestle on their work with the Cornell Ornithology Lab, using crowdsourced data around bird species, linked going back 20 years from Cornell on which bird species are indicators of overall ecosystem health. And that is very important because it does two things. One, it shows you outcomes, and two, on a more intangible level, the way that they're collecting that data is encouraging farmers to take out their phone, take a picture of the bird, submit it to the database. The database will identify the species, tell them what's happening with it, and I believe that there's an incentive payout for outcomes. So it builds a connection between the farmer and the biodiversity on their farm. It re-encourages sort of paying attention to the nature on your farm. These are a couple of frameworks that are interesting. There's a certification out there, the Regenerative Organic certification. I think eventually more of these certifications, whether it's Rainforest Alliance, Regenerative Organic, will come out there and help folks, I guess, get premiums for it. But the key point about regenerative agriculture that you'll see across definitions is that it's not about inputs and practices, it's about outcomes and improvements.
Great, thanks a lot. So you talked about premium briefly. I think it's a good topic a good time to ask also the audience. How many of you have already bought organic products when doing groceries? And how many of you have bought regenerative agriculture products? It's hard because we don't find it in the grocery store directly, right? And I guess it's hard for Nespresso as well to kind of pass along the cost of using regenerative agriculture practices. You may wonder who is actually paying for regenerative agriculture. Is it the consumers? So I would like to ask you, Marianne, is it something, you mentioned the coffee was more expensive from Nespresso. Is it something that the customers of Nespresso are paying and are conscious about paying as well?
So the customers, many of the customers are not even aware that the coffee is sourced with regenerative agriculture. So they are not consciously paying a price premium. So Nespresso is paying for the regenerative practices that the farmers implement, and somehow it's handed over to the end customer. That's for sure. But the customer would not pay a price premium just for regenerative coffee, the normal consumer. This is, I think, the problem, because there is no general definition, there is no certification, there is no logo like fair trade or organic that the people are aware of and that they are asking for. So this is why we said we have to do it, because we care for the farmers and we have to ensure that we have business continuity, and it's a strategic decision as mentioned. But let me come back also to this, how you can measure and how you can somehow guide it. What we have worked together with the Rainforest Alliance, we set up a so-called regenerative coffee scorecard. I think this is important to mention because there are 3 different levels. There's the bronze, silver, and the gold level. And depending in which level you are, you implement either more cover crops, or you have you take more care of the water that you have on your farm. Yeah, so there is, or it's about the resilience of the crop. Yeah, where you start pruning, etc. You start, or you really do it, or you renew the farm completely to a more let's say resistant crop that can stand climate change better, in a better way. So we try to put it together with the Rainforest Alliance into a scorecard so that the farmer has kind of guidance what to do and where he can improve. And that is also important for them, that they can pick out of a toolbox what works for them, so that they can improve the biodiversity and restore nature on the ground. Because they love, as you said before, each farmer loves the soil. Yeah? He's connected to the soil. He doesn't want to destroy it because it's his future income, also the income of his kids in future. But I think we should come to a point where consumers are aware about these good practices, that it helps them and their grandkids to have a good future, and someone has to pay for it. And at the moment, farmers are doing actions, and they pay for it. And it takes some time until the benefit materializes. One of the farmers that I was talking to was saying, regenerative agriculture is like a piggy bank. You have to invest, and after 3 to 5 years, you get the interest out of it. And I think we somehow have to find a way to bridge this gap of these 3 to 5 years, and who is paying for that? At the end, I think we all, as a society, have to pay for it, and we have to value also the work that the farmer is doing, and appreciate the job. Yeah, I think that's important.
Thank you. And I think the standard with Rainforest Alliance is publicly available, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So you can find it online as well.
Yes.
About regenerative agriculture in the coffee supply chain, right?
You can download it and you can see all the practices from bronze to gold in all the different areas.
Yeah.
True.
Helmut, about the topic of who should pay for the enhanced practices of farmers, what about the role of the government? Would you think that subsidies is a good way around it? Would it be more payment for ecosystem services? How would you give money to the farmers to transition to regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, this is in fact at least one of the key questions, because at the end, of course, money steers where developments go. And therefore, I think one cannot underestimate this topic, and therefore it's also very important that different institutions assist the government and the governments, in fact, in further developing changes and need time. So that's what we experienced when we suggested also in this Vision 2028 Plus process, which I mentioned before, some gradual movement from subsidy-based agricultural policy to more results-based, outcome-based agricultural policies. That, of course, thousands of questions appear with respect on how to implement it in practice. And these have to be taken seriously, because it's very important also to keep the farmers continuing with their work. And lack of trust and lack of stability is probably, at least according to my assessment, the worst issue which you can implement in agriculture. Trust and stability is needed in order to keep the farmers doing their important job. So I think it's a gradual development. I think it's important to be use a bundle of methods and approaches for that purpose, but I would like to differentiate when it comes to products and labels and certification. Then it's very important to be clear, transparent, and also controllable, because we recognize that also in a well-established area that is organic farming. Still, there is a lot of discussion going on in society. Can we really trust? I mean, there is an EU-wide regulation, there's a control system. Still, people don't trust 100%. So whatever else system we implement needs to have this basis of transparency, clarity, and thereby creating trust.
Thank you. I think one other question is around, should we have targets? Targets like, I think for the moment, 1% of farmland, but you probably know better than me, but 1% in farmland in Europe are regenerative agriculture or agroecology, which is another type of sustainable agriculture. What should be the targets, Andrew?
Well, there's also the Convention on Biological Diversity targets, which is saying 30% of land use should be given over to conserving and preserving nature. I think that the targets have to be backtracked from what is baseline survivable for humans on the planet. It's using the planetary boundaries, downscaling to landscape or country level, and saying, are we sequestering enough water? Are we building enough soil? Do we have enough functional biodiversity? Because ultimately, that's going to be the hard physics that hits us in the face in the next century, one way or another. Makes a big difference if it hits us in the next 5 years, 50 years, or 100 years. But the targets have to come from that. 1%, I think, is nowhere near ambitious enough. It should be 100%. There's no reason to be throwing away our soils, poisoning insects and birds and everything in our water. It's ourselves that we're killing ultimately with it. There's a report from the Food and Land Use Coalition in 2019 on the total costs of the global food system. Global food system industries and associated industries worth about $10 trillion a year in 2017 in the data they were using to the global economy. Biggest employer, but its costs to the global economy were about 12 trillion, mostly in environmental degradation and associated healthcare costs. Food is inseparable from medicine and health and nutrition. It's inseparable from environmental health. The UN has declared that the right to clean water and clean air is a fundamental human right. It's a little bit awkward philosophically to then price that as an ecosystem services, since when do we price human rights? However, it's very practical in terms of delivering payments to farmers. For me, target needs to be as ambitious as possible, and we will make it practical afterwards.
Marianne, from a large company perspective, so you said that you're already at 83% bronze. I guess you want to go to gold as well. Do you have a specific target, and would you recommend other companies, if feasible, to go to 100%, for example?
So I'm personally a very ambitious person, and I want to have a bright future for the kids and my grandkids. So 100% must be our aim, for sure. But the time frame is the question, and we also have to be realistic. What is our goal? We have a goal in our sustainability strategy, which means 95% regenerative agriculture minimum bronze, or even higher. So this is what we aim for, and I think this is also some work to do. But I think it has to be more common practice, and it has to be in the interest of the farmer to work in this way. And I think you have to go like a missionaire. You have to go from farm to farm and explain the benefits. And if they see the benefits, they are doing it. Yeah, I think 100% should still be the aim for all of us.
Is it hard to go to farmers and try to convince them to move and kind of explaining the benefits?
So at Nespresso, I said we have so-called agronomists that are visiting the farmers that are enrolled in the AAA Sustainable Quality Program, and I've also accompanied these agronomists in Colombia and visiting the farmers. They are welcomed like friends or family because they help them so much. Yeah? It's a lot of appreciation, and I think we also have to look not with our first world glasses on these farmers that are in coffee producing regions. We have to look with their eyes on their field and on their work, because then you have a better understanding what triggers them, what are the issues that they're having. And they're talking, these agronomists, they're talking like friends to them, and they're helping them, and they reduce the input cost. They reduce, so they increase the yields, they increase the family income, and they also get friends. I think this is very important, and with this approach, it must be an engaging approach, not an approach in saying, you have to, yeah, if you're coming, you have to, and then you get. No, this is not gonna work. It must be a collaborative approach, and this is why we send these agronomists, and then when they realize it's bringing a benefit, the neighbors are coming and saying, you earn more money. How do you do it? And then they're convincing the neighbors to also enroll to this sustainability program. And I think this is the beauty of it. Yeah? And when you see them, how they welcome the agronomists like friends, that's really heartwarming. Yeah?
It's great to hear that regenerative agriculture is actually helping farmers making more money, more resilient revenue streams as well.
Yes, true. And one other element, you mentioned it, is also, and then together with fair trade, define what is the living income price that a farm needs. Because coffee prices are in a way volatile. We always pay more. We pay a price premium for all these good practices. But is this still enough? Not always, not necessarily. And we have to somehow find a way, a mechanism with, and this is what we're currently working on and piloting in Colombia with Fair Trade together, a so-called living income reference price, so that you know region by region what is needed as an income for a specific farm. And with this, you see, okay, I can live from the income of the farm, or we support them by giving them bee hives, for example, so that they can produce honey. and they have an additional income, so income diversification. Or when you look at the cover trees for agroforestry, it can be a fruit tree, a banana tree, as I've seen in Colombia, and they can earn money, or they have their own banana to eat, and they don't have to buy it at the market. Yeah? So this is the beauty of it.
Coming back on the target question, Helmut, quickly on your side, what should be the target?
Well, it's impressive to hear what you have achieved, for example, and of course I congratulate Nespresso, many others who are setting ambitious targets and also trying to meet them step by step. I think that's what we have to do. My approach is a bit similar as I understood Andrew. I find it quite difficult to set a target for an approach where we don't have yet a clear definition what it in fact means. But in my point of view, that's not the most important thing here. The important thing in my perspective is that we use existing targets, which we have, for example, in the Global Biodiversity Strategy, the EU Biodiversity Strategy, in national biodiversity strategies, 30% of nature protected areas. By the way, in these areas you can do agriculture. It's not forbidden, but of course certain standards have to be met. Having more strictly prohibited areas, and in fact using and working with nature restoration activities. So I see a lot of commonalities with regenerative agriculture, which regenerates ecosystems, and nature restoration. So in fact, an alliance between farmers and biodiversity conservationists would be necessary, and the nature restoration law, for example, heavily debated and still a lot of conflicting ideas, is the opportunity to achieve that. And there are also very well established and binding targets which we can use for that purpose. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think we will leave time for questions. Do you have any questions to ask to our panelists?
Hello, thank you for the great discussion. My name is Christian, and I have a question to Andrew from your experience with customers. You talked about EU regulations putting pressure on companies. Now we know with Omnibus that seems to have been released, right? Maybe you can disclose one or two of these aha moments, right, with your customers when they say, now I got it, why it makes sense also economically, right, to employ a expert sustainability consultancy company like you're working for.
I have to admit that because Metabolic was known as being a pretty far out there, progressive sustainability company, the folks who were knocking on our doors to some extent had already had an aha moment before they came and sought us out. The challenge was creating an aha moment with the CFO rather than the CEO. That one, I don't think we ever really answered that question. Is probably one of the failings of our little boutique consultancy, is ever not making that connection. I will say the last 5 years have been a series of aha moments in severe supply chain disruptions, starting with the pandemic and then with extreme weather events. Sitting on a panel just like this in Colombia at the Nature Positive Pavilion, speaking about biodiversity and how important it is for companies. There was a woman from Siemens, I think, who was up on stage, asked bluntly, is there a business case for it? Not yet. The incentive structures, the finance is not really there from a pure play biodiversity perspective. However, speaking to that woman and several other representatives from big companies after that panel, they're already paying for water. Crop loss due to droughts, floods, extreme weather is already driving up procurement prices, is already creating a little bit of insecurity in procurement. So I think the aha is unfortunately coming from the painful side rather than the beneficial side in many cases. And it's getting to a point of move or you will be moved.
Other questions?
Thank you. Hello, thanks. Also from my side. I would still be interested, or maybe I was somehow missing also this this topic, or also the contrary somehow of globality and regionality in this whole conversation about agriculture, regenerative agriculture, right? Because not to criticize you, but also with Nestle or Nespresso, still it's sort of not a monopoly, but it creates somehow structures of dependency, right, in those regions, in Colombia or wherever. And also talking about Austrian agriculture, also there, right, if you not subsidize, but if you fund farmers depending on their what they add in some certain terms of if they fulfill those targets or if they reach those targets, still it's some sort of dependency, right? Because what if the government changes? What with the current political environment there is in Austria? What if a more right-wing party, for example, would rule? What do the farmers do then? So I think I would be very interested in maybe in this more systemic, also how it's connected to other systems that are, right, agriculture is very, very dependent on, many other systems. So what do you think about that? How can we make, agriculture really, from a systemic point of view, more resilient also from those factors?
Who wants to start?
Just maybe a comment, because you said dependencies. So all the farmers that are enrolled to the AAA program, they can sell the coffee also to another company. So they are not obliged just to sell to us. So we help them to do better farming processes. They will get better quality, and if they want to sell it to someone else, they can do it. Yeah. So if we see, and this is for sure natural for us as well, if we see that for consecutive years this farmer is not delivering any coffee anymore, we will not send an agronomist, or we will check, okay, what is going on there? Is he restoring the field, or is he selling the coffee somewhere else because he gets a better price? But they are free; they are not tied to us with enrollment to this program. This is what is important to mention.
Maybe a few sentences from my side, because I fully agree with your assessment. Having a look at the issues from a systemic perspective and from a holistic perspective, it is very important. That's why we think at the Environment Agency Austria also that an agricultural policy needs to be gradually transformed to a sustainable food systems policy, for example, which is much broader than that. Dependencies, a very important subject, but I think also here we need to transform the self-understanding of farmers as being dependent to a system where farmers are also self-confident, getting money for their products, not only what they can sell on the market, but also with respect to the ecosystem services they provide. That should not be seen as a dependence, but more also as a service for which the society pays. But of course, then it all comes back to what kind of prices do we pay for food? Are these fair prices? And how can we have this discussion in society to pay fairer prices, for example? Stability and transparency and reliability is important in this context, very important. And of course, policies may change, but let's work in such a way that policies change to the better. Thank you.
If I may, I love the question. It's impossible to sort of talk seriously about food without also then talking about power, politics, policy, and how these things are all intertwined. Ultimately, shifting to regenerative agriculture is a systemic change, which means it's difficult, which means it takes generating aha moments where people will change their minds. But it also means understanding how all the incentives are tilted in the other direction. In the US, the vast majority of agricultural extension schools, speaking of the agronomists building relationships with farmers, their research is funded by input companies. By the way, 3 companies own 80% of the seed stock in the world. That is not conducive to farmer autonomy, farmer income, farmer options. Similarly, things that are baked into really heavily negotiated, difficult tax policies, trade policies, the Common Agricultural Policy, the Farm Bill in the US. These create the playing field, and until the incentives baked into that start to tilt towards regenerative agriculture or different outcomes, everyone who's doing regenerative agriculture or working on it has to sort of swim upstream, work outside the system, be creative, work off of relationships, frankly, is the best way to do it, build common ground and values. And I totally agree. There has to be a question about why is it that all of the tulips sold on the Amsterdam flower market are actually coming from China when the tulips grown in the Netherlands are sold elsewhere? Why does that make economic sense? Why are we rewarded for doing that? It seems wasteful to me. And that's one of a million examples.
Thank you very much to the two of you. A big applause to them.